Recording in progress. ready. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Good evening, Chairperson and Commissioners. Today I will be presenting the modification to variance number 2019. Testing, testing. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, fine. Okay. Okay, sorry for the technical difficulties again. So today I will be presenting modification to variance number 2019-045. Now this was for a 7-unit apartment development located at 7604 Perry Road and Crest Avenue. The request we received is by the applicant for an amendment to variance number 2019-054 to modify condition number 42 by allowing a change of the approved roofing material from concrete tile on this project. This project was approved on August 21st, 2019. The planning commission adopted 2019 resolution PC 2019-04 approving variance number 2019-045. This approval was to allow development of a 7-unit apartment project with less than 25% of the required common open space. Now, on October 25th of 2021, this year, the applicant submitted a letter requesting a modification to condition number 42, which in fact reads, the exterior elevations of the building shall be provided with window shutters and awnings, gable brackets, floor overhang, corbels, accents, siding, concrete tile roofing, and front door accents. Final selection of color and material to be used on the building shall be subject to review and approval by the community development. Now, on condition number 42, the only modification we are requesting, as you can see highlighted in bold, is the concrete tile roof. Now, condition number 7 of the resolution PC 2019-04 grants the Director of Community Development the authority to make minor modifications to any of the conditions on the resolution. However, it's been determined that the proposed request does not constitute a minor modification to the project, and the applicant's request must be considered by the planning commission, which is why we have it to you guys today. The project is located at 7604 Perry Road in Crest. It faces Crest and Perry Road. It's zoned R3 high density residential. It's located in the R3 medium density residential zone. It's approximately 17,362 square feet. Now, the surrounding land uses north of this property is residential, south is also residential, east is Crest Avenue and residential, west is Perry Road and residential. Now, this is what the property looks like at the moment. It's currently under construction, which is why we have this modification requested at this time. This is what the project will look like once completed. As you can see in the elevations, they are proposing shingle roofing instead of the required concrete tile material. In the past several years, staff has recommended the use of concrete tile roofs on new residential projects just to provide a more attractive architectural design. Some of the projects that have been approved are the following, located at 5822 Gotham, 5734 Astoria, 8000 Lawrence Avenue, 5945 43 Live Oak, and 5953 Florence Avenue. As you can see, these are all multi-family projects. Now, the applicant has expressed concerns regarding the maintenance of the concrete tile roofing material, as they can be easily damaged during equipment installations and cause future water leakage during rainy seasons. In considering the applicant's request, staff agrees that the concerns expressed by the applicant are relative to the concrete tile roofing material are valid. Now, the applicant's request continues to be consistent with the general plan and the Arlington Municipal Code, and it continues to meet all findings for all variants pursuant to BGMC section 9.50.060. It is staff's recommendation that the planning commission open the public hearing and adopt planning commission resolution PC 2021-09, approving the modification on the roofing material from concrete tile to dimensional shingle. That concludes my presentation. I'll pass it back to you, Chairperson.
Addition on this item, There's another building right there in Florence, coming out, I believe it's coming out of the street at Perry. If you look it into the building in there, you got some glazes on roof that is broken when people went on the top and put some signs. Um, so I don't know. Commissions, we need to have a motion if there is no more questions or recommendation on the what we have staff presentation.
Motion to adopt the Planning Commission Resolution PC 2021-09.
I second.
Anybody opposed? No one, motion passed unanimous. Thank you. Go to the roof before it rains.
Thank you, Commission. Thank you, Ms. Carmen Morales. Thank you, Adrian.
Second item,
Chair, you're on mute.
sorry. Consent calendar item number 2, approval of the minutes. Are there any changes, additions to the minutes of October 20, 2021? If there, if they're not, I need a motion to approve the minutes for October 20, 2021. In a second.
Motion to approve the minutes of October 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
I second.
Anybody opposed? Item pass. We have a motion and we have a second. Thank you. Third item is the state legislative update planning and housing bills. The presentation will be given by the city attorney, Mr. Lloyd Pilchin.
Shouldn't take more than 40 or 50 minutes. Adrian, still advance the slides? Okay. So we have several laws to go over, and if you want, you'll see that there is a theme that they are about the state policy. The legislature has decided there's a housing crisis in the state. So these are, many of these laws deal with the housing crisis. And the other theme you'll see is the environment and climate change. Okay, so the first one is SB 9. All right, SB 9, this is the big one. This is the most important one that you'll see changes in very soon. It's called urban lot splits. Okay, I call it the end of the single family zone. Used to be, you live in a single family zone, you have a house and a garage. With the recent ADU ordinance, you could rent out that garage, or you could build an ADU in your backyard, but you could never sell it. You couldn't sell it because you have one lot. And to sell it, you would have to split your lot. And if you are in a single family zone, you couldn't split that lot. No more. Now you can split your lot, you can sell that second unit. And not only that, not only does your single family zone can now have 2 units, but each one can have an ADU. So in what used to be a single family lot, even a small one, you can now have up to 4 units if you make use of the ADU ordinance. Many of these lot splits are now going to be, the city must ministerially approve them. And the term ministerial means that the planning commission or the city council doesn't have the discretion to approve them or deny them. Person just, when it's a ministerial approval, person just brings their plans to the building department. And as long as they are comply with side yard setbacks and all that, it has to be approved. So it's always been in the past that a subdivision was a discretionary approval. The planning commission or the city council could decide whether they like the design of it, etc. But many of these lot splits will now be just over-the-counter approvals, provided that all the requirements are being met. The other thing I'll add is that there are some things too that neighborhoods could do if they don't want to have that type of lot splits. Obviously, it brings more density. So if everyone splits up their single family zone, then lots, then you will have more people living in the neighborhood. So some things that could counter that would be historical districts. If you have some type of the zoning protection of a so-called historical zone, then that's all that would be intended to protect the look of the neighborhood and such. So that's one way to counter that. But generally, we will be seeing more density, and as I said, the policy behind it, the reason the legislature passed this law is to address the housing crisis in the state. SB 10, the next one. All right, so SB 10, quickly, this is not a requirement. This is something that a city can do, they may do if they want to. And that is a city could adopt an ordinance to allow up to 10 units on a single parcel. So again, increasing density, and that ordinance itself, if a city decided to include that kind of density, the ordinance would not be subject to CEQA, the state environmental law, but the individual projects that make use of that ordinance would still be subject to CEQA. But again, this one is not a requirement. 10 dwelling units on a parcel, that's if the city elected to do that. All right, next. Thank you. Okay, AB 1398, housing elements. So again, all this more about the housing crisis. So cities, as you know, all cities and counties have to meet certain standards that are imposed on them and how many housing units they are able to provide. So that often means their general plan housing element will have to address those extra units, and the housing element will likely require rezoning portions of the city to allow for this increased density. So under AB 1398, it sort of pushes cities to do this, because that rezoning process that a city would do to comply with its new housing element, they would normally have 3 years to complete that. But if the city is late in getting its housing element complete, then that rezoning, they'll only have 1 year. So if the city doesn't want to be rushed, get your housing element in on time. And I believe from talking with Carmen, we're on schedule for that, right? Carmen, we're good with our housing, right? Okay. So, Carmen, you want to say something about that? We have a consultant working on it, and it's coming to the council on January, I believe. Did I get all that?
Yes, so Chairperson and members of the Planning Commission, somebody is not muted. I think it's Mr. Rivera. Thank you, much better. Can you hear me? Can you all hear me? Okay. So in regards to AB 1398 and the housing element, so the city, as you know, staff has been working closely with a housing consultant, Veronica Tam. She's been in front of the Planning Commission twice, in May and in August, to present. The first workshop was just to give a brief introduction on what the housing element is. And the second workshop that we had in August was to introduce to the Planning Commission the draft housing element. The housing element at this point has already gone through review, preliminary review by the Housing and Community Development Department up at in Sacramento, up at the state. And the city has already received comments, written comments from the state, which are being incorporated into a final draft of the element. Staff plans to bring to the Planning Commission that housing element on January 19th for recommendation by the Planning Commission to the City Council to adopt the element. And staff anticipates that the final housing element will be presented to the City Council on February 14th for final adoption. What Lloyd was talking about is under SB 1398, where the cities used to have the 3-year time frame to get any properties that need rezoning completed. Now the housing, the SB 1398 is basically saying you only have 1 year from the time when the housing element should have been adopted, which was October 12th of this year. So basically we have until October 12th of 2022 to get this task completed under SB 1398. Currently, the city has already hired a separate consultant that is going to be working on that consistency between the general plan housing element, what is called out on the housing element, to be rezoned to provide enough room, enough parcels to meet the number of units that we're supposed to be in compliance for the next 8 years, and the zoning. And staff is going to be working very closely with this consultant in the upcoming months to get this process done as quickly as possible. What the housing element consultant has indicated that the city will be able to show comes October of 2022 progress on what the efforts are on behalf of the city to be in compliance with this assembly bill. And at that time, it will be up to the state to provide the city with an extension on that certification of the housing element. So they're going to be going side by side, both the element and the rezoning. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to come into compliance very close to the deadline that is set by SB 1398.
Oh, it was on, but I was so loud. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, 330. Okay, so SB 330 is amendments to the Permit Streamlining Act. That's an existing state law. And the whole idea behind the Permit Streamlining Act, that was something that's been around for years, decades, I think. That was basically developers wanted to make sure that their projects were moving along in a timely manner. So they got the legislature, they lobbied the legislature to put time limits on how development applications are processed. So from the time of submittal,
until the time of approval. So the key one at the beginning is that when the developer submits their package, their application, their plans, etc., then the city has 30 days to make sure that it's a complete application. In other words, city staff can't sit on it for 6 months and then say to the developer, oh, you still need to give us A, B, C, and D. They have to be able to tell the developer and the applicant within 30 days whether it's complete or not. If it's not complete, then they inform the applicant, and then the applicant has to gather their papers and get everything submitted, and then there will be a new 30 days. So there's, it doesn't give the applicant any break. It doesn't mean that they get away with submitting something incomplete. It just means that it makes sure that the city has only 30 days to inform the applicant whether it's complete. Okay, so what this law, this new law changes is, and this is two changes, and they're pretty big. One is that when the city staff say that the application packet is complete, that locks in all the development standards. So that meaning height limit, setbacks, all the standards that the project must comply with. Didn't used to be that way. That California always had what was called late vesting, which meant that the city could always make changes. It could even change the zoning while a project application was in the pipeline. And that would mean that the project that was in the pipeline, the rules could still change that affect it. But now the amendments to this law, the Permit Streamlining Act, now say that once city staff say that your application is complete, that locks in the standards until the project is approved. So that's a big help to developers. And basically it gives them certainty. And again, this is to help the housing crisis by helping developers build more housing. The other big change that these amendments to this law make is a temporary 5-year prohibition on residential density reduction. So residential density, of course, is the number of units in an acre or in a certain area. And there's now a 5-year prohibition that the cities cannot change their zoning to make areas less dense. So obviously, again, the state wants more housing, so it wants cities to create more density, not to restrict their cities and make them less dense. Okay. On to SB 1000. Okay, so this one is, now we're shifting from housing crisis to environmental concerns. And this law, it's already not new. It's from 2016. But we threw it in here for your information. And this creates a new element of the general plan that will eventually need to be added to this city's general plan. And it's the environmental justice element. For those who may not be familiar with that term, environmental justice, basically it has to do with citing of projects that pollute an area. So where will these factories and power plants and things like that, where will they be cited, placed? And environmental justice is an awareness that they often end up in lower income, poorer communities. And that means that there are health consequences to those poor communities because of the citing of these environmentally polluting uses of land. So this law now requires that a city's general plan will have to have an element of the environmental justice element, which will discuss that and analyze what exists in the city and how things can be made better and what the future plan is. What a general plan does, is plan for the future. But it must specifically address this concept of environmental justice. And I'll just say, as an environmental lawyer, there is there's a response to that concept of that these, let's just call them factories, the factories polluting things, smokestacks, things like that. There's a response that, is it that they're always built in lower income communities? Or sometimes, and this would be a defense for the factory, sometimes the factory was there first. And then it then creates an area that is cheaper land because it's less desirable to live in. So then you have, in some situations, you have people coming to that area because it's more affordable land. And then, then it becomes a question. So is it the fault of the factory for being there, or is it the fault of the people coming there? It's a chicken and the egg question, which came first. But anyway, it's a very interesting topic. Environmental justice and our general plan will need to deal with that ultimately. Okay, next. SB 379. Again, an environmental law, and it now requires that the safety element of the city's general plan must now specifically address climate change. And it will need to include what's being called a vulnerability assessment, risks that climate change poses. So for example, for communities that are on the edge of bodies of water, they may be subject to flood. So that's the type of thing that safety element of the general plan that now must deal with climate change must analyze and plan for the future. Next. Last one, which simply builds on that. And again, these laws are not brand new. These are from 6 years ago, but the deadlines are coming up. So this is something that planning staff should be talking with the consultant that we hire to see what the cost would be to add these into the city's general plan, the timing. I know that staff rely on grant money to do these sorts of things. So these are the laws that staff will need to talk to consultants about and think about that. But this last one just builds on that last one about climate change, and it requires cities to update flood, fire hazards, and climate adaptation portions of safety element. Questions? Otherwise, I thank you, Chair Rivera and planning commissioners. That's the end of our update.
Adrian, can we go to the next slide, please?
Commissions? Secretary, will you give me anyone who wants to participate in this one?
We currently do not have anyone that wishing to speak in the chat line, Chairperson Rivera.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the staff from the commissions?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So for AB 1398 Bloom, right, 2021. So it's just one of the stipulations that there's just a reduction in the timeline in submitting or having an approval of the housing element. So it's from
Actually of the zone
Zoning,
change
sorry.
that fulfills the element.
Okay.
Ms. Flores, you need to be unmuted.
Yeah, in regards to SB, yeah, no, I'm currently unmuted, I think. Yeah, so in regards to SB9, so the units that split, would those count towards the housing element?
Absolutely, and that's a very good point, because that should help the city's ability to add units. That's absolutely right.
Good, good. Awesome. Thank you. The, again, in regards to SB9, how many times can a unit split?
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you a math guy? Do you do math?
I like math.
Okay, so that's another really good question. So, there is a minimum lot size, and that's what would determine. So, for example, where I live, it's 5,000 square feet. The normal single-family zone was 5,000 square feet. What is it in Bell Gardens?
It's the
Something
same, the same.
okay. So, typical for Southern California, a small lot is 5,000 square feet. Just imagine 50 by 100 feet. That's 5,000 square feet. So that was a single-family zone. Now, as we're saying, it could be divided up, and I believe the law says the new minimum will be 1,200 square feet. That's pretty small.
Thank you.
Chairperson Rivera, you're muted.
I'm glad I was muted.
Basically, think of it this way: for a 5,000 square foot lot, you could divide it by 4, because that would be what, 1,250 or something like that.
How about the parking?
Another good question. I believe there's no parking requirement. I know there's no parking requirement when you do an ADU, because you could build your ADU in your 2-car garage, so that eliminates the parking. So I believe that's the new rule, no parking requirement. Can you confirm that, Carmen? No parking?
I believe so.
Okay. So we're a little unsure about that, but it seems like no
Well,
parking.
actually, there is parking required if it's new construction. But you're correct, if it's conversion of existing structures, then the parking is not required.
So for example, somebody's not muted, Mr. Rivera. So under the new law, if you have, if you're gonna split a lot by splitting a single family unit into 2, under the new law, parking wouldn't be required for that second unit because it's not new construction. Correct, Gus?
That is correct, Carmen. It's only for the new construction that it would be required. But again, it wouldn't be a garage space, it's just an open parking space.
I think garages are a thing of the past.
As well as single-family zoning. In a-
So that will be, if it, let's say, let's use it as an example so regular people will understand. If we have a lot that we're gonna do 4 houses, and it's already, let's say there's already 2 in there, okay? And we're gonna do 2 more, and we take the parking away, or we're gonna have to provide parking on the new one, on the bottom, and leave only 1 parking so everybody will fight, or how that will be.
It's going to be difficult. And that's one thing that planners have been fighting. But unfortunately, this is, in a sense, being shoved down our throats. Especially a community like Bell Gardens. We're so dense, so many parking issues. and yet we still have to comply with this. So what the state is not realizing is that not all communities have the same impacts. Communities like Bell Gardens and communities here in Southeast LA are much denser than other areas where you can afford not to have the parking on site because you have the parking on the street, for instance.
Well, it's nothing we can do because we already have in Bell Gardens, we already have a parking problem, big time. I mean, if you go to the north, it's not as drastic as you go to the south where Garfield and Eastern unite. All those areas are very, very hard. So that's gonna put more problems in there, and people already complaining. So how is nothing we can do then far as planning commission and the city?
Unfortunately not, sir. The city has taken some creative steps, such as the parking study that they did to allow people to park in front of their driveway approach, for instance. Somebody can get a permit to do that. It did gain a lot more parking spaces out there. Communities by block can also petition to have striped parking so that everybody has a set space. But other than that, no, we don't have much control over that other than, voting every 4 years for a new governor. But at the end of the day, this is something that, we want to bring to you, these legislative updates, so you know what's coming down the pike. And Attorney Pilchin is also going to be presenting this to our city council on December 13th.
Okay, any questions, Commissioner? Well, we might entertain a motion then to approve the staff recommendation on this one.
Chairperson Rivera, the recommendation is for the commission to receive and file.
Receive and file? No vote? Okay, receive and file then. No vote required?
No vote required. Does anyone prefer that it be tossed in the trash instead of filed?
All right, thank you. Thank you. That's making it much easier.
Mr. Rivera, we can now move over to staff comments. I don't believe we have any.
What's that?
We can now proceed and move to staff comments.
Erica, I think it's public comments on non-agenda items?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, we can now open for public comment on non-agenda items.
Okay. Public comments on non-agenda items. Now will be, any speakers, I mean?
We do not, Chairperson Rivera.
So that concludes the comments. If you know any objection from the planning commission, I will close the public comments. Staff comments?
Chairperson Rivera, I don't have any comments for the commission tonight. I don't know if Gus has anything to say to the commission?
Yes, thank you, Carmen. I wanted to update the commission on the tenant protection workshops that we've been having. Two workshops have already taken place with the help of our Fair Housing Foundation. The city has an MOU with. The last one that took place had a total of 14 online participants and about 7 physical participants. This took place at the Ross Hall over at Veterans Park. A lot of tenant protection provisions were presented. And we are going to move forward also with a rent control workshop. This is being scheduled for December 9th. I'd like to go ahead and share the screen. So commissioners, this flyer was posted on the city's website and also placed on social media, and it will be distributed to over 500 residents. We're trying to get participation from the public, both landlords and tenants, to come and hear what the committee, the ad hoc committee that has been getting together, has found. We've been meeting with specialists in the field, and we will have 3 panelists to present information, as well as our city attorney who's been working on this with us, Alex Lemieux. So I just encourage everybody to spread the word so that people can participate. They can participate physically. You know, it would also be at Veterans Park, Ross Hall. This is on December 9th, 2021 from 5 to 8 p.m. Or they can participate via Zoom, and the webinar ID has been provided to everybody. It will be translated into Spanish. So again, I encourage for you to send this out to your family and friends so they can come in and discuss whether the city wants to move forward with a rent control ordinance. And that's all I have. Thank you.
You know, some of these meetings, how do you distribute the information? Because I'll be honest, I forgot some of them, and I didn't get no more advice when it's taking place. So
Well, all the commissions should be receiving the flyers. We send them out through email, but we also are posting them on the city's website and on social media. So I would say if the commission did not receive those flyers, we're going to make sure we send them to you every time a item comes up. There's also the CM biweekly that happens every 2 weeks. Do you receive a copy of that, Chair and Commissioners?
no.
Okay. Erica, in the future, let's go ahead and make sure that they received a copy of the CM biweekly. That should be going out to all commissions.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's no reason, like in my case, there's no reason why I should not be missing some of those meetings, and it's for the good for the cities, and you know, I should be attending some of those meetings, but by the time I know it's too late, oh, I didn't see it, and I'll be honest with you, sometimes I write it down, but I forget. I do other things and I forget. So if a flyer will go down or something, it will go down to just reminder. I think we should be there.
What we can also do, Chair, is send you a calendar invite. So it's automatically on your calendar and it'll pop up as a reminder.
Okay. Thank you. Commissions? Commissions, any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Attorney Pilchin, Adrian for the presentation, Gus, Carmen for all you do for the city, and of course, support from Erica and our IT support for today. Thank you for saving us. Oh, and also happy Thanksgiving, right? To everyone.
You're muted,
And I was muted, so again, I say. No, what I would say is happy Thanksgiving, and make sure you fix some chickens and not turkeys, and I'll be looking for turkeys. And I will, do you have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn, I need a second.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
I
Very
second.
good.